Hi there, this is Maisie Bloor and welcome to my presentation for my production project. In this presentation I will give you a walkthrough of how I made my project step by step and to explain my decisions in the process. For the clothing, I wanted to show that the character came from a warmer climate. For this look, I looked at the clothing from areas such as Egypt. The inspiration for this was that I wanted to create the feel that this character was one that would always be travelling, living a more nomadic lifestyle. To achieve this, I chose to focus on baggy clothing that could be used for travelling long distances. I used the standard brush and moved topology brush to morph the clothing to show that the clothing is loose-fitting. When it came to modelling the horns, I wanted to create something that was more realistic. I began by looking at references for animals that have horns. I could immediately rule out animals such as reindeer and deers, and I wanted a more curved look. I began looking at rams and goats. I took inspiration from these animals, curving the horns back much like a ram's horn. I believe that the effect works really well. The horns look natural, and I created them by using move topology and modelling these separate from the main model. These horns work really well and suit the fantasy design that I was aiming for. I wanted to create a fantasy design. I believe I succeeded in certain areas, looking at the horns and the tail and how the clothing interact with these parts. However, I think it could have looked more fantasy-esque with more details. However, due to him being a nomadic character, he wouldn't have too many fancy details to him. For the combat styles, I was looking at how fantasy characters dressed when dealing with possible combat. This character I've chosen, I have been creating for a while. I decided to choose this design over the other ones as I believed it had more practicality. Both in D&D and Dragon Age, they have horned characters and are set in a fantasy style. These both inspired me because I liked how they interacted with their clothing. At first I attempted to create the body from scratch. I tried to do this a few times, but I found that the proportions after getting feedback from it were incorrect. After attempting a few more times at creating the body, I ended up getting some advice and just ended up using a pre-made body model. However, I added the pre-existing model by adding the tail and the horns, as well as creating the clothing from scratch. For the textures, I ended up creating them using Polypaint in ZBrush. This allowed me to use the right colouring that I chose for the concept. Showing some people my work, they did ask about the skin colour, and I specified that he is meant to be a demon-like creature. His skin is an ash-like grey colour. For an organisation of the files, I put them into separate folders with subcategories to make it easy to find the right file. I went about making a timetable to help me organise what would happen and when it would happen. This helped me give a routine that I would stick to. In the end, I didn't end up sticking to the routine, as issues with software crashes and not being fully trained in certain software made me go a bit behind the deadline. Finally, I also created a pipeline to allow me to know how my work should be dealt with step by step. This also allowed me to ensure I didn't miss a crucial step in the process. There was a few slight issues when using auto-rigging in Maya for my model. For some reason, the auto-rig aligned the skeletal structure slightly outside of the body. Despite this, the rig did attach to the model and moved it with realistic proportions. If I could go back and change parts of this project, I would like to make sure that I was more accustomed to the software I was using. For example, I wanted to use Mixamo to give my character an animation. However, with the restrictions and not being fully trained, I struggled to learn how to use the software and how to connect all the pieces together. I would also have liked to add a bit more simulation to the outfit to give it more of a realistic flowing look. Despite this, I believe that with everything that had gone wrong with the project, software crashes, lack of hardware and dealing with COVID not allowing me to go into uni, I made a product that fit what I was aiming for by improving my use of ZBrush and creating clothing whilst still being creative.